Coming up on today's show.
I think what happens most frequently is people have good intentions in starting to organize their office, but life happens.
Because you had an interesting way that you became a professional organizer, so tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. I was a C-level executive assistant for about 10 years.
I think about, when I think about a contractor, I think about a pickup truck with a cell phone and a front seat full of papers, and I can't imagine what their office looks like back at wherever their office is, right?
Well, it's definitely a generational thing too. We're getting a lot of younger contractors who are moving more technology-based, but there are still a lot who use pen and paper, sometimes pencil and paper.
How to quickly organize and clean up your office today. Today on Keeping You Organized. Hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized. We're going to give you a chore that you can get done today. By the time you're done with this podcast, you are going to be able to have your office organized and cleaned up and ready to go and be super productive. So we're going to bring on a brand new first-time show guest, Amy Olson. And what's the name of your company?
Life Done Simply.
Life Done Simply. Yes. And Amy is here in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I know we're actually recording this the same day we have our friend Louise as well. So anyway, well, Amy, you know, it's an intriguing thing that people want to get their office and organized and cleaned up in a quick method, because people sometimes don't, they get overwhelmed and they think, oh, it's going to take me hours and hours, I can't get it done, and then they just don't do it, right?
Yes. I think what happens most frequently is people have good intentions in starting to organize their office, but life happens.
Yes.
People are knocking at your door, the boss comes in and they need something, and everything gets derailed. And then at the end of the day, they look at probably what has happened is they've created a bigger mess by starting to organize.
Yes.
And then they feel a little defeated and think, well, what's the point?
Forget it. Well, let's talk first about your journey to become a professional organizer, because you had an interesting way that you became a professional organizer. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. I was a C-level executive assistant for about 10 years. At that point, I decided to venture off and start my own business in contracting. I was a specialty contractor specializing in demolition and hazardous material abatement. Yeah, I know, different world for sure. All the while being a pretty organized person, but what I was finding is I was helping a lot of my vendors and my subcontractors get organized, learn productivity tips, just so they could get me what I needed. And I realized that was a real passion of mine. So decided to leave that industry and pursue professional organizing as a full-time gig.
Great. Well, I think about, when I think about a contractor, I think about a pickup truck with a cell phone and a front seat full of papers, and I can't imagine what their office looks like back at wherever their office is, right?
Well, it's definitely a generational thing too. We're getting a lot of younger contractors who are moving more technology-based, but there are still a lot who use pen and paper, sometimes pencil and paper, and rely on a lot of older methods to organize. But unfortunately, those sometimes contradict with what's happening with those younger employees and colleagues. So there's a little bit of friction there, but my theory is everyone can learn. It just takes a little bit of time.
And what we're going to talk about, this could apply to a home office, it could apply to a regular corporate office, because I think, you know, it's a space that we work in, right? So what are the first things that we have to do in order to get ready to even tackle this project?
Sure. Well, the first thing I would have my clients do is create zones, because the idea is you're going to start sorting and purging, but you're not going to have any place to put those items. So let's create some work zones. And I think ideally, you want your workspace to be as clear as possible at all times. Now, that might not be practical for some people, but I always say you should have a 3-file zone on your desk that's for active things. Your first file being your action items, things that you still need to tend to personally. That can be mail, you know, at home. Those can be bills, or it can be something that a colleague has given you that you have yet to go over and give your edits. The next item would be pending. So maybe things that you have pulled from that action file, you have taken a look at, but need maybe further approval, you're waiting on some information, those would stay in pending.
Okay.
And then after that, a reference file.
Oh, okay.
Some things, you can put some FYIs, some memos. Maybe it was an interesting article in a magazine that you read, you tore out and put in there. Ideally, your reference file, again, because it's an active folder, you want to keep that 3 weeks or newer. So you'd be going through these files on a daily and weekly basis to make sure that you're getting everything in there.
And that's why I think a lot of people leave stuff that, you know, they don't want, they want it in sight and in mind, not out of sight and out of mind.
Yes.
So they have that little, whatever, it's a desktop organizer, those kinds of things. But what happens, I suppose, sometimes it starts to filter out, and then your whole desktop becomes a zone in itself. So let's try to get that in one little zone, right? That's what you're saying.
Right.
Just try to say, okay, this area right here is going to be that zone. What are some of the other zones that people might consider?
Sure. One of the first things you want to do after creating that active work zone is create a colleague inbox, or even if you're at home, a family inbox. So rather than having colleagues or children coming into your office and just throwing papers on your desk or throwing them where they think they belong, this would be a clear plastic wall bin or something similar just inside your workspace, just inside your cubicle or your home office. That's, you know, and start training your colleagues to start putting the things in there that they need you to look at. Then you're able to take those items out at your leisure when you're ready, and then you're ready to actively file them where they need to go. Yeah,
it's funny, in my current position, the person who had it before had people trained that if they wanted something done, they had to put the piece of paper on the seat. So I remember I walking in one day and I'm going, what is this paper doing on my chair? And then I put it away. I go, they must. Then the next day, there's another paper. Why are people putting this? And I had to basically retrain people, say, I do have an inbox.
Yes.
And it's not my chair.
Right. And I think by making that away from your workspace, it alleviates any stress. So if you're taking a break and you're coming back to a project that you're working on that's on your desk, you don't want to see another to-do item sitting on your chair. Right. You know, that's for another time when you're done with what you're currently working on.
Inbox, some way that works for you in your space.
Exactly, exactly.
What other zones do we need to look at?
Sure. The third zone would be your active project files. So whatever you do for a living, most likely it revolves around a project. And if you're at home, it can be a home improvement project, something for the kids' school. But these would be put away in your desk, in a folder, labeled in whatever way works for you. They can be clear files, they can be you know, standard hanging files, but put away and labeled so you never have more than what you're working on your desk. You know, keeping those in an organized manner so you always know where to grab those.
So the ultimate goal is that center workspace is for one project that you're working on right now. But you have your other projects accounted for, like either in a drawer or another kind of holding container. And
if you work with colleagues where you share files, a nice thing to do is maybe use a closed accordion file, something where you can contain those project files so they're easy to grab on the go. Also, maybe keeping those, again, further away from your workspace. If you're sharing them with other people, the idea is keeping them away from your work zone so you can maintain control of that.
Good. All right. So we got our project zone, or the place that we want to put our projects. What else? What other zones? Is that?
That's it for zones. You're ready to start sorting and purging.
Okay. Well, before we do that, we got to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll start the sorting and purging. We're talking about how to quickly get your desk and your office space organized and cleaned up today. And we'll be right back. Now, there's a place just for you. Life can be busy, and you still have to keep it all together. That's why you like to be organized and in control. Introducing MyOrganized.life, a special place where you can get ideas and solutions to organize what's important to you, your important papers, your important decisions, your important life events. We show you the ideas and products to stay organized in your life. See what's new. Stop by and say hello. Visit us at any time at www.myorganized.life. It's just for you. MyOrganized.life by Smead. Find us at www.myorganized.life. MyOrganized.life. We're back now on Keeping You Organized, talking about how to get your desk and office space cleaned up and organized today. Action items. We want to get this done. We're with Amy Olson. And Amy, before the break, we talked about getting the zones. That's really the first way to get set up. Now what do we need to do now that we have zones established?
Start attacking that paperwork. Okay. And it will be daunting at first, but I promise you, once you start going through your paperwork, if you have the zones set up, it will become a very fluid process and it will get easier as you go on. But I always suggest tackling the paperwork first. Okay. Now, in doing that, avoid starting any to-dos that you come across as you're starting to go through that paperwork, because that is the #1 derailment when you're trying to organize your office. And that's, again, at home or at work, is you see something, oh, that's right.
Even if it's just a quick phone call.
Yes.
Yeah, we can't do it. Yeah.
No, today should be all about just organizing your office. Your phone should be on Do Not Disturb. You should have your email on Do Not Disturb. You're really just tackling getting rid of what you don't need anymore and organizing what you do.
Okay. Well, what about the person who comes knocking on your door, or you get a phone call? Should you maybe just answer the phone call? I
would really recommend just avoiding that altogether. Really set the expectation at the beginning of the day with your colleagues or your family, and just noting this is really important for your future productivity. I just need this one day to get this done, and I'll get back to you tomorrow.
Okay. So how do we go about sorting and purging? I mean, what is the tactical way we do that?
Well, definitely make sure you're starting with an empty garbage can. And my recommendation for an office is always have a bigger garbage can under your desk or next to your desk than you think you need, because we tend to not throw things away if it's already full. So, start anew, start fresh, but definitely know what's going to go in recycling, what's going to go in the garbage. But after paper, you're definitely going to want to start tackling reference materials, catalogs, handouts that you were given at conferences, things that you have the best intentions on reading, but really are just stacking up on your desk.
What's your philosophy about maybe scanning that stuff and then throwing it away, or how do you decide whether it's something you need to keep or not?
Sure. I would recommend not giving into the temptation of scanning on this day, day that you're organizing your office. Rip out any reference materials that you want to reference for the future. Maybe you want to scan. Put those in your action file, your new action file that you've created. Or if there's no scanning needed, no filing needed, but you want to reference it, put it in your new reference file. So you're able to get it again now, because the goal is to start sorting and purging and get the cleaning done. Let's get those items into those files, so tomorrow or a day later this week you can get to those.
Those are great tips. What else about sorting and purging do we need to keep in mind?
Well, we tend to keep a lot of really interesting objects in our office.
I mean, like those little squeezy stress balls?
Exactly, trinkets.
Yes.
Trinkets. Vendors like to drop by calendars and pens and stress balls, and maybe you go to a meeting or a convention and they give you a tote bag or something else. And ideally, all of those items are given to you for one reason. So you remember that business when you leave.
Yes.
But do you really need those items in your office, where it's meant to be a productive area? Or are they kind of distracting from who you want to be and the message you want to send? So I always say, get rid of them. You know what? There's no guilt associated with it. The item served its purpose. Let's get it out.
What's interesting in the trade show business too, I think half of those items end up in the hotel garbage anyway. So I'm not dissing the trinket and trinket business, but it's one of those things where you know, yeah, you've maybe, and if you need, let's say you need the phone number off there, put it in your contact list, right?
Yes.
But yeah, to have 10 different stress balls or whatever it is, you know, they make it harder and harder to throw some of these things away too, because you know, they have some value to them, but
Yes.
maybe you only need one.
Right.
Right.
And then it kind of goes to my next point, which is get through those office supplies.
Right.
We tend to hoard, even the most organized of us,
Yeah.
tend to hoard hundreds and hundreds of paper clips, boxes of extra staples, 20 or more pens.
Yes.
You know, take all of those excess items that you aren't going to be using in the next month, get them to a supply closet, get them to a common area in your office, maybe a break room or something, along with the trinkets, the stress ball, the pens, the calendars, and see if some of your colleagues wouldn't want some of those items. Maybe it would serve them better than you.
Now, what, having been an executive assistant for C-level executives, what kinds of like pen holders or things like that have you seen that have worked well in the past? I mean, on top of the desk, in a drawer, I mean, just out of preference.
I think the best system I've seen is the person who has their one valued pen.
Ah.
Most of the executives I've worked with have their 1 or 2 pens. They're very nice pens. They don't say Marriott Hotel on there. They don't say, you know, the Ritz-Carlton. It's their one nice pen that they know is theirs. And also, other people know it's theirs.
Yeah.
So there's not that temptation. You know, when you have 20 pens on your desk, you're going to have a lot of people coming by thinking that they can yank a pen, you know, for their own use. So I think that's the best result. Always have items on your desk that you enjoy using.
Yes.
You know, make sure if your stapler's not working properly, get rid of it. That's costing you productivity, and it's adding to that stress and kind of distracting you from the topic or task at hand, which is getting your project done.
Well, listen, I know we have a lot more to cover, and we're not going to be able to do it in this episode, so you're willing to come back next time and we'll finish up this what we're doing today, even though we're going to have to do it in our next episode?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, tell us before we go just a little bit about your business. What kind of clients do you work with? Do you work just locally, or do you do virtual, and your website and how people can get a hold of you?
Sure. So I'm located in St. Paul, but I do operate throughout the metro area.
Okay.
They can find me at lifedonesimply.com. And I specialize in workplace productivity in small business offices, but I do residential as well.
Okay.
Again, specializing in home offices and paper.
Great. Well, Amy, I can't wait to get to the rest of this episode, which is going to be next time. So, folks, make sure you come back next time so we can help you get your office cleaned up and organized and get it done. Well, maybe not today, but today of the next time you watch the second part of this program. And we'll see you next time on Keeping You Organized.